Let me tell you a story about a time when a tiny island known as Great Britain said "fuck" to tyranny. You don't want to miss this one. Summer 1940. Britain stands alone. France has fallen. Europe's basically one big Nazi Airbnb now. And Hitler? He's got one thing on his mind: crossing the Channel. But there's a problem. To invade Britain, Germany needs control of the skies. No air superiority, no Operation Sea Lion, and for once, a dictator's beach plans are ruined by cloudy weather and an angry little island full of fighter pilots. This is the story of how radar, stubbornness, and some frankly ridiculous bravery stopped one of history's biggest bullies from taking over Britain. Welcome to the Battle of Britain. Before we dive into the dogfights, let's meet our main characters. It's a real who's who of war and poor decision-making. First up, Air Chief Marshal Hugh Dowding, head of RAF Fighter Command. Calm, collected, looks like he hasn't smiled since 1916, and plans to keep it that way. He's the reason Britain had a fighting chance, mainly because he refused to listen to idiots. Then there's Hermann Goering, boss of the German Luftwaffe, thinks he's a genius, actually just really into uniforms and shouting. Confidence, 10 out of 10. Accuracy, somewhere between missed the barn and bombed a field of cows. And then there's the few, young, outnumbered, flying on guts, caffeine, and planes that rattled when you looked at them funny. They flew multiple missions a day, slept in chairs, and somehow didn't completely lose their minds. Spoiler. These guys, they're why we're not all speaking German right now. These were the people who held the line. One side had the numbers. The other had radar, resolve, and Dowding's complete lack of patience for nonsense. All right, it's 1940. Hitler's feeling cocky. France is toast. Europe's under his boot. Britain, just a soggy island full of tea and defiance, and Hitler wants in. Enter Operation Sea Lion, the master plan to invade Britain. Step 1, gain air superiority. Step 2, sail across the Channel. Step 3, victory parade in London. Sorted. There was just one small issue. Britain had the Royal Navy, the biggest and angriest fleet on the planet. So, unless the Luftwaffe could control the skies, any invasion force would end up as fish food. But Hermann Goering had a solution. Don't worry, mein Führer. I'll wipe the RAF from the sky in days. Just give me some bombers and a vague sense of direction. Confidence? 10 out of 10. Accuracy? Still terrible. So the stage was set. Germany had the planes, Britain had the will, and both sides were about to play the most dangerous game of chicken the sky has ever seen. Okay, before we get to the shooting bits, let's talk about Britain's secret weapon. No, not sarcasm, though that helped too. We're talking about radar. Britain's chain-home radar system was basically an early warning network made of towers, wires, and pure 1930s wizardry. It could detect incoming German planes while they were still over France, giving Fighter Command a massive head start. So while Goering thought he was launching surprise attacks, the British were literally putting the kettle on. With radar, the RAF didn't need to keep planes constantly in the air, which would have exhausted their tiny pilot pool. Instead, they waited, watched, and pounced. It was like playing chess with X-ray vision, while Goering was playing darts blindfolded, drunk, and upside down. Oh, and yes, the Germans did try bombing the radar towers. Didn't help. The British just fixed them, sometimes before lunch. This wasn't just tech. It was game-changing strategy. Radar let the RAF fight smarter, not harder, and for a while, it made the difference between survival and surrender. By August 1940, Goering realized bullying their opponents wouldn't work. like it did with the French. Cutting it, the Brits weren't surrendering politely. So he changed tactics. No more softening up the coast or poking radar towers. It was time to go for the throat. The RAF's airfields and fighter command itself. The Luftwaffe hit hard, smashing runways, fuel supplies, even operations rooms. British pilots were flying 5, 6, sometimes 7 missions a day. Some barely made it back before having to take off again. Sleep, optional, panic, suppressed, morale, somehow still functioning, mostly thanks to sarcasm and Churchill's speeches. Through it all, Dowding held the line. No drama, no wild counterattacks, just cold logic and a quiet muttering of, "Don't screw this up." Behind the scenes, a whole army of women were running Britain's air defense system like a giant game of 3D chess. They plotted raids, scrambled squadrons, and probably did it in heels. For weeks, it looked like Britain might break. Airfields were wrecked. Pilots were dying faster than they could be trained. If the pressure kept up, the sky would fall. Just when things were looking grim for Britain, the Luftwaffe made a huge mistake. And by huge, we mean Hitler just changed his mind again levels of huge. Instead of continuing to pound RAF airfields, which was working, the Luftwaffe started bombing London. This'll break their spirit. Instead, he gave Fighter Command a breather and gave Churchill exactly the excuse he needed to fire up the speeches. London burned. Civilians died. But morale, it didn't break. It hardened. The Blitz, meant to crush the British people, only made them more stubborn. Meanwhile, RAF bases finally got a chance to recover. Planes were repaired, pilots rotated, radar stayed online, and Goering, still shouting about medals. In military terms, this was what experts call a whoopsie. The Blitz gave Britain breathing room, and that changed everything. By mid-September 1940, the Luftwaffe was still coming. Day after day, wave after wave. The sky looked less like weather and more like war. The RAF was outnumbered, outgunned, and out of patience. But they weren't out yet. Here's what made the difference. The RAF could refuel and rearm faster. Their planes could get back in the fight in under 30 minutes. And thanks to radar, they were always exactly where they needed to be. Fighter Command held. Every raid was met. Every loss was replaced. Sometimes with a 19-year-old who'd flown a Spitfire once. This is when Churchill said it. Never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few. Translation: these lads were doing everything and doing it exhausted. In the end, it wasn't about numbers. It was about coordination, grit, and knowing your home was one bad day away from invasion. And somehow, Britain held the skies. October 1940. After months of bombing, dogfights, and very little sleep, the skies begin to quiet. Hitler wasn't happy. Without control of the air, Operation Sea Lion was scrapped. The big invasion? Cancelled. Turns out Britain wasn't that easy to beat after all. Goering naturally blamed the weather, then the Luftwaffe, then his shoelaces, anyone but himself. Meanwhile, Britain breathed. Bruised, battered, but unbeaten. Hugh Dowding was quietly retired not long after. No big parade, no farewell speech, just the thanks of a country that didn't quite realize what it owed him. The Battle of Britain wasn't just a military victory. It was a symbol that democracy could fight back, that tyranny could be stopped, that tea really is a performance-enhancing drug. This was the first major defeat for Hitler's war machine. And it happened because a few hundred pilots, a wall of antennas, and one very grumpy man named Hugh said, "Not today." Moral of the story? Never bow to tyranny, especially not the shouty kind with moustaches. If someone bigger, louder, and full of nonsense tries to knock you down, stand tall, fire up the radar, and politely throw a teacup at their face, because bullies fold fast when you stop blinking, and sometimes the best way to win is to be stubborn, scrappy, and just British enough to annoy the enemy into quitting. Thanks for watching History Sticks Does the Battle of Britain. We hope you enjoyed the chaos, courage, and questionable moustaches. If you learned something today, or at least laughed once, give us a like, leave a comment, and subscribe for more silly stick history that nobody asked for, but we're doing anyway. Because history deserves to be remembered, even when drawn by people who can't draw.